deep into introducing, I'm not going to go too deep into introducing the scholar because I would like them to do it themselves. But first, we have Sophie Baker.
All right, should I go ahead and share my screen? All right. All right. Just one moment. I'm sharing from my iPad. All right, can you see my presentation? Awesome. All right, I'll get started. So my name is Sophie Baker, and I work with Peter Nguyen and Jonathan London on their implementation of the AB 617 study. So about me, I'm a third-year global disease biology major, interested in environmental health, environmental design, and environmental justice. And I grew up in the Bay Area with kind of a limited understanding of the connection between society and the environment. And I became interested in exploring this connection further after attending the environmental justice seminar my first year at Davis. And this is where I learned about herbicide-free campus. And I joined with HFC working on eliminating herbicide use at Davis. And from there, I learned how to do GIS, and I volunteered with Californians for Pesticide Reform, mapping pesticide use in Shafter in the Central Valley. And this motivated me to apply to the Bradshaw program, looking at air pollution and emissions reduction in Shafter once again. And these experiences in the Bradshaw program have inspired me to conduct further research on a specific type of emissions, pesticides, and the regulations that surround them. So a little bit about AB 617. So the California Air Resources Board created the Community Air Protection Program in response to Assembly Bill 617, which established community steering committees, or CSCs, to oversee the development of community emissions reductions plans, or CERPs. And as you may have noticed, the word community is tacked onto almost every aspect of this program. And so one of the questions this study tries to answer is, what is the role of the community in CERP implementation, or where is the C in CERP? And so these questions are a part of an overall study of AB 617 implementation in Shafter and Fresno. And in more detail, our project involves observing stakeholder interactions inside and outside CSC meetings and noting the power dynamic embedded within those interactions. And we're specifically studying the role of the community in CERP implementation with the goal of assessing the efficacy of the program and informing further community-led efforts. So in sum, we're trying to answer, are they on their way to achieving their goals? And to answer these questions, I attended CSE meetings in Shafter over Zoom and took notes looking for key themes and patterns that will be used for note coding. And Peter, Dr. London, Jess, and I also met biweekly over Zoom to share our observations and piece together larger themes and patterns happening across communities. And these larger themes and patterns have led to my preliminary finding that as long as CERP implementation happens on CARB's and the Air District's terms, it will not truly be a community-led effort. In other words, if residents have to ask for their requests to be prioritized, it is not a community-led effort because the same power dynamics occur. The implementation of community emissions reductions measures is at the behest of governmental agencies and now only in a smaller arena. And this arena has been described by CSC members, right, and other communities as a coliseum. And these residents have been fighting, right, to get their community chosen as an AB 617 community out of many who apply each cycle. And steering committee members can be steering committee meetings can be just as contentious as the community selection meeting when residents feel disrespected over ignored requests for transparency. So what have I learned? What I've learned from these findings is that simply because something is labeled as a community effort doesn't mean it is one. The degree to which an effort is community-led depends on who is talking, how they're talking, and who is making decisions and how they're making decisions. And in a way, there is an ecology of stakeholders linked by interactions and embedded with power dynamics. And I've had an interdisciplinary path studying wildlife biology, sustainable agriculture, and now global disease biology. And I find what integrates all these fields is ecology. Specifically, I'll take this ecological systems approach to further my studies and further my work, and connecting ideas and people that may not typically come together, just like in the community steering committee meetings. And I also want to note, I believe the Bradshaw Scholars Program itself exemplifies this ecology with a unique network of participants, each with their own projects. And although this year was virtual, scholars remain connected through shared values and visions, and our projects are still rooted in place with much of our work overlapping geographically. And I greatly benefited from the monthly workshops put on by the CRC and the opportunity to interact with my fellow scholars. And I feel that I've made invaluable connections through the Bradshaw Scholars Program, and I'm more prepared to take the next step as an agent for regional change. So I really hope to see y'all again when we cross paths again, and I'm sure that our paths will reconnect. Thank you. Oops, I missed my thank you slide, wait. Well, I was just gonna say thank you to the CRC, its supporters, Araceli, Catherine, Bernadette, Peter, Dr. London, and Jess. So thank you.
That was great, Sophie. So we're gonna hold all the questions to the end after all the presentations. So next up, we have Claire O'Brien. I'm going to be sharing my screen on behalf of Claire's presentation. So Claire might be having some Wi-Fi issues. We're going to just kind of skip over her and we'll move on to the next person and then we'll come back to her.
Can you hear me?
Oh. Yes,
this is Claire. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me try to share my screen. My internet's being a little glitchy, so I apologize. Can everyone see my screen okay right now? Okay, thank you. So my name's Claire, and my project was on looking at transportation improvements, gentrification, and displacement in San Joaquin County. So a little bit about me. I am a fourth-year PhD student in the pharmacology and toxicology graduate group, and I have a background in public health. And much of my research is focusing on looking at early life and how the environment impacts lifelong health in infants. And my provider was the CRC mapping lab, and I worked with Sarah Watterson on this project. And the goal was really to create a story map using ArcGIS, showing how transit improvements might impact gentrification and displacement within San Joaquin County. And so for this project, I really got to work a lot with ArcGIS, learn how to use data to create maps, and then learn how to use these maps and other sort of data sources in order to tell a story. And so for this project, we created a story map, which is an online interactive map. And for this purpose, I just took screenshots because it was easier. But we were really looking at several different types of transportation improvements, including increased public transportation, increased safety, and just overall increased walkability. And in the story map, we created this map that really first looked at the percentage of the population within San Joaquin County communities, and then looked at the percent of the budget that went towards transportation improvements to look at who was spending different types of money on these projects. And so, for example, you can see Lodi, which is orange in the top right corner. While they have a lower percentage of the population that lives within Lodi, they were spending more money on transit improvement projects. And then on the opposite side, in the blue, you have Manteca, which has a higher percentage of the population that lives there, but they're spending less money proportionally on these transportation improvement projects. And then we wanted to display how the gentrification patterns within the San Joaquin County communities. And so everything that is orange and tan are communities that are already exclusive or are becoming more exclusive. So gentrification is ongoing. And then you have communities in the blue where gentrification or displacement is possible, and those communities might be at risk for those things. And then kind of the last component that we worked on was this interactive component that it's actually a sliding scale on the online mapping system where you can slide this bar across and it will show you the median household income compared with the median home values by census tract within San Joaquin County, where the red is higher median home prices or higher household income as well. And so actually when you slide this bar back and forth, you can see that for communities where their median income is lower, they actually have very high median home values. And so when you slide the bar all the way to the left to display the median home values, most of what is in San Joaquin County is this dark red color. So there is definitely a gap within these communities between median household income and median home values in these towns, and indicating that they might be at risk for gentrification and low income communities might be pushed out of these neighborhoods. So that was just a very quick overview of my project. I hope I didn't cut out for anybody, but I wanted to say thank you to everybody at the Center for Regional Change, and in particular, Sarah, who helped me put together this story map, and Catherine and Araceli as well. It was definitely an interesting process to learn how to do GIS remotely and not have be able to work with somebody in person. So Sarah and I spent some time like screenshotting and kind of helping she helped me walk through the ways to put these maps together remotely. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Claire. That was a great presentation. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to move on to the next scholar. We're going to move on to Celine Bassett.
All right, let's start sharing. Can you see my screen? Okay, awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Celine, and I was part of the 2021 Bradshaw cohort. So a little bit about myself. I am a third-year undergraduate student at UC Davis, and I am majoring in international relations and history. And over the past few years, my interests have kind of narrowed down to being more directed in law, policy, nonprofit work, as well as children's care and advocacy and social justice. And so I was informed about the Bradshaw program through a class on environmental justice that I took with Dr. London. And so I'm very happy that that all worked out. So my placement site is called Civic Spark, and it is an AmeriCorps program. And at Civic Spark, we're mainly really focused on building capacity for local governments and communities to address emerging environmental and social justice challenges. So this can be attributed to water quality, climate change, food insecurity, housing insecurity, things like that. And so Civic Spark provides a fellowship in where fellows are matched to projects that are put on by partnering local governments and agencies across California. And so the role in Civic Spark is to oversee these fellowships and provide networking, staff support, and training opportunities for the fellows throughout their 11-month service year. And so in terms of my specific role at Civic Spark, I was placed on the Racial Equity Planning Grant team. And so the purpose of this grant was to analyze racial equity practices within the program and the organizational structure. And we used perspectives, experiences, and suggestions of different stakeholders in the program that are involved to create impactful and successful changes to shape a more equitable future for the program and everyone involved in it. And so this was really focused on identifying actions within fellow recruitment, hiring, training, and supervision to help reach specific goals that we could measure and do our best in terms of advancing racial equity for the future of the program. And so some of the things that I did and some of my responsibilities, at the very beginning, I conducted some internal analysis and baseline assessments just to kind of look through all the documents that we use for our program and organize them and summarize them with like a more racial equity lens and try and identify already some areas of advancement and areas where we had some gaps that we might want to focus on for racial equity focus. And so I attached some screenshots here of kind of what these looked like. And then I also helped develop some surveys for stakeholders. And so here's like a sample question of that. And so we really wanted to engage with our stakeholders and see what they had to say about our racial equity practices. And so I helped with the stakeholder engagement and facilitation, and I co-hosted some focus groups that we also held with each stakeholder group. And the focus groups were like face-to-face interactions on Zoom where they, it was a completely confidential environment, and they got to tell us basically anything they wanted relating to the grant and how we were going about this and what to do for the future of the program and things like that. And so now I'm supporting the writing and development of our action plan, which I will talk about here. So we have concluded all forms of analysis. And so now we're in the process of gathering all of our information and organizing everything and drafting it into a racial equity action plan. And this will be released in the end of July. And the purpose of the action plan is to outline the research methodologies and internal analysis that we've been using throughout this grant, as well as specific actions that we have outlined that we're going to change programmatically for Civic Spark and for the future, just to create better experiences for the fellows and a more equitable California, since we're representing so many different regions in California. And I'm most likely going to be staying on the team through the end of the summer to support the release of our action plan and to conclude the project. And so real quickly, some things that I've learned. I've learned about the domino-like effect that program practices in an organization like Civic Spark can have on regions and communities across California. So it's very important to analyze all practices, even if they seem like they might not have as big of an effect. Everyone's interconnected and intersecting identities are very important to consider in situations like this. And I've also learned about the importance of narrative and perspective in improving an organization's culture. And so like having that human aspect, which I think Civic Spark has done a great job of doing throughout this grant. And it's been really nice to be a part of that. And in terms of my own life, I've learned how to be a better ally in society and in the workplace as a white cisgender woman. So I feel very thankful that this experience has taught me that. And so here's my little page of acknowledgements. Everybody at Civic Spark that has seen value in my work and has been super encouraging. I'm super thankful for that, especially during this really tough year that we've had. I feel very lucky that I was able to be part of that. And also to the Bradshaw and team and Senior Center for Regional Change team. It's been a real pleasure being a part of this experience. So thank you.
Round of applause for Celine, that was great. Okay, so we'll move on to the next scholar. Her name is Molly Doyle.
Hello, everybody. Go ahead and share this with you. Cool. So my name is Molly Doyle, and I'm going to be sharing a bit about my experience with the program this year. Today, I just want to go over myself and introduce myself, talk about my placement within the program, and then give an overview of what I did and what I learned from it. So to start off, I'm a fourth-year student majoring in design and community and regional development. And I really love how those two majors kind of intersect and play with each other. It really creates a cool field of study to go into. I'm also really heavily involved in the undergraduate admissions program. I've been a tour guide for UC Davis for the past 4 years, in addition to being the president of the Davis Filmmaking Society, and I've also been a DJ on-campus radio station. But through all these different activities, I've realized that I really love connecting with different people and kind of help foster their own passions and help them explore their creativity a lot more. So with my placement with the Bradshaw Scholars Program, I was placed under Brandon Louie at the Center for Regional Change, and I was a YPAR research assistant. So YPAR stands for Youth Participatory Action Research, and is an idea that really recognizes the knowledge that young people hold and encourages them and supports them in creating community change on the issues that are really affecting them. And so together, Brandon and I asked this question of how can design be used to support the efforts that the CRC is doing in sharing YPAR content and supporting YPAR projects. So one of my, before we could decide what projects I was going to do, I really had to establish this foundational knowledge of what YPAR means, what type of language is used, what YPAR looks like on the ground and in theory. And so I spent a few weeks reading texts, but also compiling a spreadsheet of all the YPAR, not all of them, I tried to get all of them, but a lot of YPAR organizations, both in California and around the world. So this is a screenshot of that spreadsheet. And I gathered over 50 different organizations, put their phone numbers, their emails, all on this spreadsheet. And it was really crucial in kind of showing me what YPAR can look like and what it does look like here in California versus across the globe. And so by kind of researching all these different orgs, I both learned a lot, but I also created a great resource for the center to use in their future work. So my next project with this program was doing design research on this website called Community Futures Community Lore. And this was a website that the CRC has recently launched, which is a hub of really important YPAR resource guides. And it kind of holds a framework of how to think about a YPAR project, start off with it, move through it, and then eventually release your findings. This website also includes previous YPAR projects so people can learn from them and understand what has been done and how they can build off that. So I took a few weeks and I looked at this website and made a lot of design critiques on it, on what was effective, what wasn't effective. And where I saw gaps in this website, I created a design solution, which was a video that's going to walk users through this website. It'll situate them in kind of this YPAR context and then explain everything that the website has to offer, because it's a really incredible resource and we don't want anything to go unseen. So in my work, I created some mock-ups of what this would look like housed on the website. And I'll go ahead and play one of these clips. This is the introduction here. So Brandon and I spent a lot of time researching like the narration, how it would flow, doing a storyboard. And I used my design and video skills to produce this video. It's about 6 minutes long and it'll be housed on the website. And we'll just click through here to my findings or my learnings from this program, I guess. And so not only did I really get to refine my skills as a video producer, but I also navigated some pretty big feelings about being in a global pandemic and graduating and being in a really rough internship as well, like work heavy. And so I was really proud of myself for coming out of it and being able to manage all those things. I was also really able to clearly see how design and community development intersect with each other, not only in this specific context, but across all different fields of our society, really. And so as a graduating senior, that was really crucial to be able to experience and see like, wow, I actually learned something that will be beneficial in the future after graduation. So that was really, really awesome to experience. And I just wanted to finish with a thank you to Brandon for being like a support system, a mentor, a friend, all in one for the last 6 months. And also all the undergraduates that worked on this website in the last few years. I relied heavily on their content for my own work. And then all the friends in the Bradshaw Scholars and at the CRC, y'all are doing incredible work. So I want to recognize you. But thank you all very much.
Round of applause for Molly. That was great. Okay, so we'll move on to the next scholar, and it's going to be Grace Johnson.
Hi, everyone. So I did my project with community care health centers, and my goal was to implement a successful community composting program for them. A little bit about me is I grew up in Sonoma County on a small homestead. And so I was surrounded by agriculture, and my family is really passionate about it. And so I'm a sustainable agriculture and food systems major here at Davis. And my emphasis is on the relationship between food and society. I'm really interested in community development and urban farming. And I'm also passionate about food justice, food sovereignty, and kind of taking back, providing food for yourself and your communities. And a side note is I might be interested in worms, as you'll find out. A little bit about CommuniCare is they are a Yolo County Health Center. There's 4 locations, and I was fortunate enough to go in person and work in Woodland, at their Woodland location, on their garden. They are a federally qualified health center, a migrant health center, and they believe healthcare is a right. And so, as you can see in the mission statement, they want to provide the services that people need without them stressing about paying or having insurance, which I thought was really unique to their operation. And what my project was involved with their Food is Medicine campaign, which involves them pooling resources to implement an on-site garden on an empty lot that they had outside their health center. And they also provide cooking classes. So they grow the food and they give it for free to the patients. And then they provide cooking classes to teach the patients how to cook and eat the food. And where I came in was, these are the compost bins that the city of Woodland was kind enough to distribute to them. And so I did some research and helped them implement this compost program that would involve community participation. And since COVID was an unforeseen issue, it was hard to find participation in terms of the larger community. So we started with staff, and the staff were able to bring food scraps, kitchen scraps, and get everything going. I was tasked with making compost piles in a bin. So the loose compost piles involved me gathering materials, using the scraps from people's kitchen waste, and I would make compost piles, which I like to call garbage lasagna, because you just layer green waste, brown waste, kitchen scraps, and the ratio is around 4 parts brown waste, 1 part green waste. And they got really hot. I did have to turn them pretty quickly because they were very hot. So a lot of activity. And the other system I built was a vermicompost bin. So verm means worm, pest. So it was a worm bin. And so I got to help paint, build the box for them. And we had a master gardener, Steve, bring in some red wrigglers, the most common composting worm. And so I got to monitor that and get involved with worms, which was really fun, really cool. And along this whole process, I was doing a lot of research, and Edie, my mentor, wanted me to compile all this information that I had been exposed to and rank it in terms of accessibility and literacy levels. So there's stuff for teaching kids how to compost, and adults, college students, people that are really into it, some sciencey biochemistry articles and papers, 30 pages long, really people who are really into it. And I really like this aspect of the project because I'm really interested in agricultural education, and I want to be able to hopefully teach it one day. So moving forward, this was a really amazing experience. I had a great time. I worked at the garden with Brian Boyce, their main garden overseer. He was the gardener. And I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot from Edie, and this experience overall was really wonderful. What they're planning to do is, the bin is huge. It's over 6 feet long. And so they're hoping to fill it up. They repopulate based on the amount of space they have. So they will repopulate to fill up the entire bin. And we're hoping to give some worms to people during demonstrations when COVID restrictions are opened and people can visit the garden. And also we can open up the composting program to include the greater community and not keep it just staff, because participation started to decrease over the weeks. And so having a more steady influx of kitchen waste to close the food system, just keep our food system in a regenerative state and not keep it as a linear system that it often is. And we basically wanted to divert waste from landfills and put this compost back into the garden and keep everything going. And so I'm really excited to see where everything goes with this program, and I hope it picks up and that people are really excited about it. Thank you to everyone, Edie, Brian, coordinators, the Center for Regional Change, and all the scholars, and everyone's here to listen. Thank you.
That was great, Grace. The worms and composting. We love it. Okay, so moving on to the next scholar, it's going to be Ali Larmon.
Hi, y'all. Thank you so much for having me. My Wi-Fi has been really wacky today, so I'm going to go ahead and keep my camera off to avoid being kicked out of the meeting. But hopefully y'all are able to hear me okay, and if not, just send me a message so I know. But like Catherine mentioned, my name is Ali Larmon, and I had my placement at the Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. So a little bit about me. I am a third-year undergraduate student at UC Davis, and I'm pursuing a double major in community and regional development and Spanish. And within community development, I'm really interested in environmental policy and regional planning. And when I'm not working on school or working on the Bradshaw Scholars Program, I'm also a Carbon Neutrality Initiative Fellow and a ASUCD Environmental Policy and Planning Commissioner. So a lot of my interests lie on the intersection of social justice, policy, and climate change. A little bit about the Leadership Council where I was placed. The Leadership Council is a community-based nonprofit in the Eastern Coachella Valley and San Joaquin Valley. And the mission of the Leadership Council is to work alongside the most impacted communities to advocate for sound policy and eradicate injustice to secure equal access to opportunity regardless of wealth, race, income, and place. So Leadership Council does a whole array of work kind of all over the spectrum of policy advocacy. And I was tasked on working on communication for specific efforts within their advocacy. So I want to share about 3 communications projects I worked on over the past 6 months, starting with my work around the Oasis Mobile Home. The Oasis Mobile Home is a mobile home park around the Eastern Coachella Valley that suffers from really terrible living conditions. And with the help of Leadership Council, the residents of the mobile home are suing the landlord and the owners of the park. So I just wanted to share a 10-second clip that we included in some of our communication efforts from a resident speaking about her water, which reminds me that I need to share my audio. Okay. Oops.
Estamos a 15 de septiembre, son las 7:31 de la noche y miren la agua tan sucia que está saliendo y así nos tenemos que bañar. ¿Qué pasa?
So that was just a really short clip. You can view the whole thing on the Leadership Council social media, but it was really an eye-opening experience for me to do this because I didn't really realize how many folks in California were struggling with water issues like this, and it was also really exciting to be able to use my Spanish skills to help the community. The second project I worked on was an editorial piece about the California Air Resources Board decision around agriculture burning, and I wrote an op-ed about the agriculture burning's impacts on the health of vulnerable communities, and it was really exciting to speak with residents and also to kind of employ environmental justice theory that I had learned in my studies. And the last and kind of largest project I worked on at the Leadership Council was an editorial piece about the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. So I actually interviewed a resident of the Central Valley who hasn't had clean water in 12 years. When she does have water, she can only use it for washing because it's very contaminated, and she needs to buy bottled water. Pictured here is one of her wells. She has really unstable water access, and we wrote this piece to draw attention to how the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act impacts communities, rural communities, and how it can be changed to make sure that our most vulnerable California residents have access to water. And then kind of in summation, this was a really important experience for me to speak with this resident. It was very eye-opening to learn how my advocacy and communications can create really tangible change and be really important to California residents. And a couple more reflections I have is one of the most important things I learned was a deeper understanding of the San Joaquin Valley and Eastern Coachella Valley. I've grown up my entire life in the Bay Area and haven't really had an opportunity to work with people outside of the Bay Area, so it was really exciting to start to understand some of the interconnecting issues in California. I also learned a lot of great hard journalism and editorial skills, which was really useful, and also an appreciation for nonprofit and community activism. Leadership Council does a lot of great work, and I'm really excited to continue working in these spheres. So I'd like to offer some thanks and acknowledgement to the folks at Leadership Council, specifically Crescencio, who is my supervisor, and also all the wonderful folks at the CRC. I could not have done it without you all. Thank you so much. Attached is my email if you have any questions. You can also check out the Leadership Council website for all my full articles. Thank you.
Round of applause. That's great. Just seeing that video of 12 years with no clean water. That's just wow. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next scholar. Her name is Wendy Lee.
I hope y'all can see my screen. If not, just like shake your head or something. Otherwise, I think we're good. So, hello, I'm Wendy Lee, and I'm just going to talk about my experience as a Bradshaw scholar. So I'm a third-year double majoring in managerial economics and communication, and I was paired with the UC Davis Clinical and Translational Science Center, the CTSC. More specifically, their community engaged research and inspire programs. So the CTSC supports biomedical research projects by providing services and resources to investigators, staff, scholars, and trainees, and community partners. So I had two responsibilities. My primary task was to develop a database on Airtable. And as a little kind of side task, I had to also conduct the literature review on social media best practices. So the first one, the Airtable database, it's meant to facilitate and promote collaboration in a UC Davis-wide community of practice, and also to kind of help develop community partnerships and outreach. So to show you how this can be done, I figured I'd just kind of share the database. There. Can you all see the database? Yeah. So there are 3 tabs: department centers units, the individuals in the community of practice, and the projects. So one way, and each tab has like different views with different filters, groupings, and sortings. So for example, if I was an organization and I needed academic scientific expertise, I go to this view, and here it's like they kind of filtered out all the organizations that listed academic scientific expertise as an asset that they can provide. So let's say I expand on one of these, the Clinical Translational Science Center, and then I kind of read the details on assets, and I think that's something that I can benefit from. So I just scroll down, and that's the website. I can get more info there, or this is linked to the individuals tab. So if I click here, that's one of the individuals at the CTSC, and there's their email, and I can reach out to them really easily, right? Another way, let's say I go to the individuals tab. So these are the individuals in the group, and I go through this, and for example, they talk about their areas of interest, expertise, and I see community engaged teaching and research. That's something I'm interested in. So I just expand the record, and there's their email if I want to reach out to them, have a coffee chat, their department if I was curious. And it's also linked to the projects table. So I can click here, see what projects they're involved in. And I read this and maybe it's something I want to get involved in, something I want to learn more about. And so you kind of see how the three tables are linked to really provide that ease of access to information and facilitate that collaboration. Yeah. And then my second task was the social media literature review, and it's to support stakeholder engagement by examining how social media is used by other institutions and organizations. So I kind of gathered information from a variety of sources: homeowner associations, college admissions, libraries, and health organizations. And I kind of compiled the information, see what many organizations are doing, and I learned about things like social media listening, social media management, and analytics tools like Hootsuite and Sprout Social. And there was a bunch of ideas for great content too. So like from all three tasks, these are what I learned. From the first task, I learned how to use Airtable and database design. Airtable is being used more and more widely, so I think it's a pretty useful tool to learn. It is still relatively new though, so we had to learn mostly from scratch, but it was fun to go through the learning process together. Then from the second task, I learned research skills and social media best practices. And as someone interested in going to marketing, writing that paper kind of benefits me as well, because learning all those practices I can kind of implement them into my own marketing related club work or future career. And last but definitely not least, working in that professional environment. For example, 2 weeks ago, there was this general meeting with the community of practice, and I had to present and demonstrate that database I just showed you, like a 10-minute presentation, and I was really nervous, but good experience overall. Something I would hope to do differently at my future internship or job, though, would be to take more initiative from the start. Because, as a student, we're very used to being told exactly what to do, all those assignment instructions right down to the T. So I think next time I want to try investing more time, exploring more on my own, just really taking that initiative. Yeah. And then appreciation. So shout out to the Bradshaw Scholars Program for putting everything together, matching us all with the organizations, providing us with monthly workshops. I'm sure it was no easy task organizing that. So shout out especially to Kat and Araceli. And then, of course, the CTSC for being such supportive mentors. When I was in a different time zone a few months back, they were really aware of and empathetic with that. And overall, they just really gave me such a memorable learning experience. So shout out to Elizabeth Vasile, Melissa Price, Sarah. So, and that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Great job, Wendy. I really appreciate the walkthrough through the database. It was very nice. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next scholar, Janine Nguyen.
Hey everyone, can everyone hear me? And okay, awesome. So hi everyone, thank you for being here today. I know that it's rather late in the day, so I appreciate you all being here. And as part of what I worked on, I actually worked on community conversations on environmental justice in Sacramento. And with the Bradshaw Scholars Program, I was luckily matched up with Jackie, who is from Veritable Good, and she is one of the greatest mentors I've gotten to work with, and she's really challenged the way that I think about like working with government agencies and stakeholders and also community partners, just because, as I always said before, it felt very intimidating and very daunting and very like black suit and tie, but a lot of the times we just showed up and almost like had a cup of tea alongside us or a coffee. So starting off with my introduction, I'm a third year at UC Davis. I go by she, her, they. I am a sociology, law, and society major and a public health and Asian American studies double minor. So given my background in circling back on environmental justice, what we mainly focused on was developing next steps, alignment between agencies and community partners, and creating a safe space for community conversations. So what does this actually entail? So to provide more background, the city of Sacramento started SB 1000 implementation on environmental justice as part of the general plan back in 2019. And as part of Jackie, who is my supervisor's contracted outreach, she hosted a design thinking workshop with regional agency staff. So this includes like the Air District, SACOG, RT, the city, the county, like you name it, and local CBOs to hear from the Department of Justice Environmental Justice Bureau. So a lot of stuff that I had no idea about before that I got to learn through this fellowship, because as you can see from like my major and my minors, a lot of what I do in school in my own work, like volunteering for clinic and stuff, I don't get to really dive into environmental justice. So this was a really great learning opportunity for me to expand my reach on discerning like the importance of One Health and considering environmental health. So VG Consulting also hosted a listening session series in North and South SAC, as well as like basic workshop outreach. And we got a lot of information about things that we know about environmental justice, and the city responded to the way agencies responded to these things. So because of that, Jackie actually asked me if I wanted to work with her to circle back on community issues specifically, to introduce events and concepts that don't directly inform the general plan, but rather provide opportunities for collaboration and regional efforts to work together. So thus, we had the Regrouping on Environmental Justice Plan, and this was actually designed to circle back with everyone who participated in the design thinking workshop. And we're thinking of actually holding it in August rather than when I had the fellowship. So a lot of the work that I did was planning for the event, and in responding to the community feedback provided in the listening sessions, we categorized the problems in the following areas or buckets. So air quality and transportation, which are linked together, housing and anti-gentrification, food access, workforce development, and communications, or the lack thereof, which is what we always say. And in rethinking environmental justice issues in COVID-19, my main goal and my role in helping out Jackie and making this event happen was retooling the event into an accessible virtual space to move the conversation forward and to still address community concerns in Sacramento so that way they don't get brushed under the rug. In addition to that, I was instrumental in devising the best format for the event and developing a contact list to identify community partners and developing content. So I wanted to flex my Excel sheet because I love a good Excel sheet. And this was developed over the course of the past several months. So it has a bunch of names, a lot of addresses, a lot of LinkedIn websites that I had to look through. And I thought it was really valuable to see how my own experiences in my other extracurriculars and whatnot be applied in this setting, where otherwise I would assume that like you had to have these connections beforehand. I didn't realize that it could be as easy as just messaging someone on LinkedIn or just emailing them, like cold emailing them. So in addition to that, with my takeaways, in navigating this remote fellowship, I realized how crucial communication and collaboration is to circle back on community concerns, specifically regarding environmental justice implementation. Although my main research interests have always been public health oriented, this experience has shed light onto how environmental justice concerns are public health concerns. When people can't access housing, food, transportation, or have limited reach to workforce development opportunities, the exacerbation of social determinants of health within underserved low-income communities is a symptom of how environmental issues are neglected and not prioritized. And with effective communication and literacy being integral to ensuring that the public can be informed, but also to connect stakeholders, agencies, and community partners, in order to properly develop and implement solutions. Also, sorry about my family. That was one of the biggest part of this fellowship, being with my family at home and having them interject in between. But in developing the contact list and content and identifying partners, it was really beneficial for me to see, again, how these conversations look like, how these solutions to alleviate environmental issues in the long term are even done in the first place. And in determining resources, labor, background, and knowledge, it's all necessary to create this safe space in the first place for people to convene, for people to be comfortable enough to address what they've been thinking about, especially in the areas that they live in. And it was also really valuable for me to realize that it can be helpful to reach out to potential supporters for the event, to not overextend ourselves, just because in my own studies, like it's always been working independently. It's always been like having to stick with your gut and do things on your own rather than reaching out and networking with others. So I think that in terms of maintaining a level of professionalism, I also learned how to retain a sense of authenticity and approaching others with humility so they'd feel comfortable, again, expressing their concerns and what they'd like to see in the near future. And this has also shed a light again as to how language accessibility is something that needs to be invested in and more prioritized, especially in working with low-income ethnically diverse communities. Adding on, I just wanted to end with this. Why is this important? Environmental justice concerns are public health concerns, because I know for a fact people don't believe that. And thank you everyone for listening. Again, last shout out for the Bradshaw Scholars Program. I appreciate y'all. And then again, shout out to Jackie for being a great mentor and really making my day every time we would meet. Thank you, everyone.
Round of applause to Janine. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next scholar. The next scholar is Nicholas Peterson.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Nicholas Peterson, and I will be presenting on the work I did on the City Nature Challenge 2021 with the Center for Community and Citizen Science. A bit of background about me. I am from San Diego, and a fun fact about me is I do kayak racing down there. I am a community and regional development major and an environmental policy analysis and planning minor. My career ambitions are to go into the field of urban planning. And here are some of my favorite photos I have taken in San Diego to add a personal touch to this presentation. Let's see. So the City Nature Challenge is the uniting of citizen science and urban ecology. When one thinks of science, one typically thinks of researchers conducting science. However, citizen science is researchers collaborating with the general public for anyone to get involved in making observations. The City Nature Challenge does this through anyone using their smartphones to capture photos of urban plant and animal wildlife, also recording the location to inform a global data set of urban ecology. And this year, over 400 cities worldwide participated. The 2021 participation in the Greater Sacramento region, which for the City Nature Challenge is defined as the counties behind me, is 8,341 wildlife observations of 1,495 different species made from 591 different observers. In organizing this participation, using my background in WordPress, I created a website from scratch with a contemporary aesthetic to serve as the hub for interfacing with the general public. And there it is behind me. In addition to that, I managed a grant from the Green Initiative Fund to engage the local Davis population in the City Nature Challenge through the avenue of promoted posts on social media. I designed graphics, including the ones behind me, to spread awareness of the City Nature Challenge. The other half of my role with the City Nature Challenge is spatial analysis through geographic information systems of the data our local community members gathered through the City Nature Challenge. Pictured behind me is all 350,000 plus of the wildlife observations made during and between past challenges. And as you can see, they're everywhere. But when we look at the heat map, we can see the density of the wildlife observations are mainly near the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area, urban Sacramento, and a bit near the Lake Tahoe area. My favorite map I have made by far is the hexagonal density map. Each hexagon is 1 mile in width, where the darker the green the hexagon is, the higher the density of wildlife observations. This granular density data enables so many spatial analyses that can be done, such as density of various taxonomic ranks of plant and animal wildlife, and what is located where wildlife is and is not located, which is all in the works, and I'll have that completed by this summer. And then to discuss what is next for me, in addition to continuing working with the Center for Community and Citizen Science this summer and through the next school year, is I will be using the data from the City Nature Challenge project to inform my next school year's bachelor thesis with the University Honors Program to explore the question, how can particular urban forms lead to the thriving of urban wildlife, and how this can inform future urban planning strategies. And I wanted to extend my deepest gratitude to the wonderful people at the Center for Regional Change, my knowledgeable colleagues at the Center for Community and Citizen Science, and both my mentor and colleague, Ryan Meyer, who has made my internship experience incredibly invaluable.
Round of applause. That was great, Nicholas. I love the maps. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next scholar, Megan Taragui.
Hello. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Hello, my name is Megan Taragui, and I've been working with the Rural Mobility Initiative research team at UC Davis Institute of Transportation Studies and MioCar. MioCar is a car sharing program that was launched out of San Joaquin in 2019. And I've been working under JC. My internship was looking at rural areas of California who don't have transportation, such as places to get to groceries or hospitals. By providing electric car sharing or ride sharing programs, people are able to get to their destinations. People are able to rent electric cars or ride sharing programs with their phones for a low rate for a day or just for a couple of hours. And by using electric cars, it's not adding more to the pollution problem. I'll just exit. Sorry. A little about me is I'm a first year transfer student. So I'm a third year pursuing a major in community regional development with a minor in education. And right here are the 8 counties my internship was working. And this is a screenshot of our ARC map that we are still currently working on. And this screenshot shows the part of California of San Joaquin Valley, Central Valley, and Bakersfield. By using the GIS tool, each symbol represents an important part of the research, such as locating where it's best to put locations of charging stations or which part will be more beneficial. And although I don't know how to use GIS program just yet, I was able to do data collection and create flat files for the ARC map. Most of my internship consists of data cleaning large data sets and breaking it down to specifically meet what the research team is looking for. These are just 2 that I worked on. And my other time during the internship was looking by doing research on EV car sharing and ride sharing program methods. By doing this, I was able to figure out what worked and what didn't work for their companies. This is a screenshot of expansion sites of MioCar pilot program in San Joaquin Valley. In the green is where the current locations of MioCar is over here. And in the blue is where the future locations is further up north of the map. And then where is the greatest need for access to vehicle due to low vehicle ownership is if you look at the red, the more red it is, it means the areas that would benefit from car sharing pilot. Lessons I learned in the future. I learned that this internship furthered my interest in conducting research in the transportation field. I also learned there's a lot more I need to learn. There's a lot more information out there for me. I also learned that I need more experience with GIS and other software, but most definitely a takeaway is that I'm considering to go to graduate school for transportation after I'm done with Davis. And lastly, I want to give a huge thank you to JC. This was a screenshot of my very last meeting with Grace and JC. I just want to say thank you for guiding me in everything and showing me more about the transportation world and showing me that transportation is a topic that everyone should definitely talk about and learn more about in what communities and figure out what solutions we can do out there. And lastly, I want to say a huge thank you to the staff members of Bradshaw and the scholars and Meocar for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Great presentation, Megan. Okay, we're going to move on to Dalia Raka.
Hello, everybody. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, cool. Okay, so hi, everyone. I'm Delia, and a little bit about me. My hometown's in Blacksburg, Virginia. I was a Virginia Tech alum, so go Hokies if there's anyone out there who is Tech alum too. I'm a second-year PhD student in the Civil and Environmental Engineering department, and my research interests are kind of in a bunch of different places, but kind of in the overlap between water quality, public health, and then the sanctity of life and environmental justice, which I was able to kind of delve more into in Dr. London's environmental justice class, which was really awesome. And I'm really interested in understanding and kind of looking at the ways in which we treat and value water and how that often mirrors how we treat and value each other, and working with and for communities and learning how to really, make those human connections with the communities that I work with. So as a Bradshaw scholar, I had the honor of working with the Yurok tribe, specifically the Yurok Tribe Environmental Program, YTEP, under the tutelage of Dr. Suzanne Fluharty. And this community is actually the same community that I'm working with for my dissertation project. So I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about them and introduce them. So they're the largest federally recognized tribe in California. There's more than 6,000 members, and their origin lands are in Northern California. And I wanted to share a couple quotes because I think they kind of captured this concept of a connection with the non-human entities of our world in the Indigenous worldview. So the first one is from a journal article called "Decolonization is Not a Metaphor." Indigenous peoples are those who have creation stories, not colonization stories, about how we came to be in a particular place, indeed how we came to be a place. Our relationships to land comprise our epistemologies, ontologies, and cosmologies. And then Risling, Baldi, and Yazzie in their article introduced this concept called radical relationality, which is this idea that all the entities of our universe are intricately connected and that when one is hurting, all hurt together. And so they kind of described this in this really beautiful quote. The water that we drink is the water the salmon breathes, is the water the trees need, is the water where bear bathes, is the water where the rocks settle. And I just wanted to share those because the Klamath River, which runs through the Yurok Tribal Reservation, is kind of the focal point of my research. And I just wanted to recognize that it's not just the river in and of itself, it's also a sacred entity and an intricate part of the identity of the Yurok tribe themselves. So my dissertation project is with the Yurok Tribe Environmental Program and within the NIEHS Superfund project. And so my Bradshaw Scholar project was kind of a different portion of the same project. So this overall project was to analyze the river and sediment samples along the river and to kind of determine if and how environmental contaminants within this river and these places along the reservation are contributing to the tribe's elevated health issues. They have exceptionally high cancer rates, proteinuria, spontaneous fetal loss, and miscarriages. So my personal focus in this project was the Klamath River time series data. It's a set of data from 3 years that were collected across 12 different sites along the river. And I'm trying to create a spatial and temporal analysis of the contaminants to determine where they're coming from. And then ideally, the hope of this project is to see how they can contribute to these illnesses and how we can begin to remedy those. And I work with Dr. Thomas Young and Dr. Beth Rose Middleton. So within my Bradshaw Scholars program, the project that I got to work with was kind of a subset of this same project. The community found a particular contaminant called hexavalent chromium within one of their drinking water sites, which is here where the X is. And this compound is known to be cancer causing. So they wanted to kind of research more on this compound. So my project was to create a literature review on the health effects of this compound and the unique exposure routes for this particular community. And then to determine where this compound would most likely be found, whether it would be in the water, the sediment, or the biology, like the fish tissue, or where exactly it would be located so we can start sampling there. But this has been a hard year for everybody, and my project was cut short as my family underwent some really challenging health issues from COVID. And so I kind of just wanted to talk about the biggest takeaway that I've taken from this experience, which has just been learning from this incredible community and my mentor, just this empathy and care and compassion for me as a person and for all the work that we've been doing. She was extremely understanding and, you know, kept insisting that I remember to take care of my family and myself and prioritizing those things. And I just wanted to share a phrase that she sent to me, which is in the Yurok language, that I then looked up because I wanted to understand what it was. But Ayakwi is basically, it is a greeting, but it is something that's used to imply not just hello, but also I miss you, and that it's I'm happy to see you. And it's a concept that's used when community members go to visit the Klamath River and visit this being in this sacred place. So I think one of the biggest takeaways that I've taken from this experience is just, you know, learning from this strength and resilience and just compassion and getting to really have that connection with this community, with my mentor, and to learn from them throughout this whole process. And I'm just really, really humbled and grateful to have had that. So I wanted to give a little special thank you to Dr. Suzanne Fluharty and the Yurok Tribe Environmental Program, Dr. Beth Rose Middleton, Catherine Araceli, and all the Bradshaw lecturers and speakers. You guys have been just incredible. And thank you to the UC Davis Center for Regional Change for this wonderful experience. I'm really honored to have been a part of it.
Thank you, Dalia, for such encouraging words. So we have one last presenter. So last but not least, I'd love to present Hannah Zaino.
Hi, everyone. I'll be sharing my screen. So I'm Hannah Zaino, and I'm going to be talking about my experience with California Climate Action Corps. So a little bit about me. I'm a third-year sustainable agriculture and food systems major. My emphasis is on food and society, and I will be graduating in the fall of 2021. And some of my interests include environmental justice, climate change, food justice, and sustainability. And I've been lucky enough to work on these issues and interests within my program this last 6 months. So the first thing is, what is California Climate Action Corps? And this is another program that's within Civic Spark, which is a fantastic fellowship program. And it's a brand new governmental pilot program that focuses on climate change. And it's the United States' first ever climate service corps. So I've had the privilege to help with this pilot program. It focuses on mitigating climate change, creating professional development opportunities, and fostering equitable outcomes for disadvantaged communities. So one of the first things I did, you can see my video playing, is I started off with the database creation. Me and a fellow were able to work on this together, and I started off researching some case studies, and this included within urban greening, wildfire mitigation and resiliency, and food recovery. So I looked at some case studies, and we created a database that allowed fellows to add their own case studies and to add their own research for further usage. And so the next thing I worked on was I ended up analyzing some quantitative and qualitative data about who the fellows are and what the projects were. And so these infographics were created in order for any guest speakers that come in to get an idea of who the fellows are, who they'll be speaking to, demographics and interests. So that way they have a good idea when they come in to have a guest speaker in a lot of the workshops that happen. And so one of the next things that I worked on was I looked at some orientation survey results. A lot of fellows went and shared some orientation data, and I analyzed both qualitative and quantitative and compiled them together for some easy understanding of what happened and to help with some improvements and some summary of how the orientation went for this pilot program. So some of the things I accomplished were I was able to create the database. I was able to work on some survey analysis. I was able to work on outreach because I participated in some food recovery network calls, and I was able to outreach with some nice UC Davis professors and get some people as guest speakers, and then work on some education because I helped develop a food recovery network call, and then working on infographic creation and design. So some of the lessons I learned how to work with some fellows, with a team, and also by myself. So all of those different aspects really helped me learn how to work with all sorts of people. And then I participated in education, networking calls, and more. I learned how to outreach properly, design some survey analysis, and work on design with the infographics. And I learned about the benefits of fellowships and community service. And these are really awesome programs. They really help the community, and I was definitely glad to be a part of it. And I learned how to work remotely and how with COVID, how situations can change and to be flexible and adapt easily. But it was a really awesome experience. So I wanted to say thank you, a special thank you to the whole California Climate Action Corps team. They were all so kind and welcoming, and I really enjoyed working with them and hope to continue working with them in the summer. I wanted to especially say thank you to Kaylee, who is my mentor, and she worked with me every week and helped me along the way. I wanted to say thank you to the Ted Bradshaw program coordinators. They were really incredible with our workshops and everything. And then all of the Ted Bradshaw guest speakers and educators. Thank you so much.
Yay, round of applause. Okay, so just because of time, I'd love to take a group photo right now. So if you are feeling comfortable, please turn on your cameras, fix your hair, fix whatever you have to fix, and then I'll take a picture. I'll do a little countdown.